I'm the only candidate in this election that has tried a single felony jury trial of any kind. But even more important than that, I have been the chief assistant prosecuting attorney in Columbiana County for the past 20 years. And in that time, I have tried a number of murder trials in addition to all other serious felony murder or felony criminal offenses. I've tried rapes, I've tried felonious assaults, I've tried manslaughter offenses. Most recently, in the last couple of years, I'm proud of the fact that we were able to indict and convict two persons for providing drugs to persons who overdosed and died. And both those persons are serving lengthy prison sentences now.
I'd say there's a few different factors, but number one being I have the experience to do the job. I've been exposed to the job as a prosecuting attorney for the U.S. government. I was a JAG officer. I was also a special assistant U.S. attorney for the Department of Justice, and I did all those jobs. As a newer attorney, was kind of tossed to the wolves and forced to sink or swim in that role. Excelled at that role, was promoted several times, then became responsible for a team of prosecutors. And to this day, in my reserve capacity with the United States Air Force as a JAG officer, I'm a lieutenant colonel and a staff judge advocate. So I run a team of prosecutors in a full service legal shop for an air wing. So it's a division level if you're thinking about the Army. So I have that criminal law experience. And then when I got off of active duty, I went into private practice, became a partner at one of the area's largest law firms, and recently went to be a member at another very large law firm in the area. You have this mix of about world and then as the civil realm with a lot of government work as well. So I think with that background, and then you add a new, fresh perspective. My opponent's been there for 33 years. The prosecutor he works for now has been there 43 years. So we're talking fresh eyes, fresh folks, getting a new look for that prosecutor's office, moving it into the modern day.
Well, it's a great benefit to have either a police officer in charge of a department, or in my case, an assistant prosecuting attorney in charge of a division that has a great deal of experience and boots on the ground. I am aware, painfully aware, that Columbiana County is a destination county in terms of our drug trafficking situation. As you mentioned, we are a crossroads, but we're a destination, not just from the places that you've mentioned, but also Columbus, Detroit, and in some cases, as you mentioned, Pittsburgh, and we've had as far as New York City. And we even had, in the last 2 years here, a fellow who was trafficking with a Mexican cartel in Juarez, Mexico. And I was able to indict that man. And on the eve of trial, he was, I guess he got cold feet. We had put together a great case against him, and he pleaded guilty. We put on an extensive sentencing hearing, and at the conclusion of that hearing, the judge sentenced him to 31 years, which I'm quite certain is the longest criminal sentence ever delivered for a criminal defendant accused of trafficking drugs in Columbiana County, and maybe in the state of Ohio. I'm not certain, but certainly in Columbiana County. So my job is to punish the drug traffickers to the greatest extent that I can. And that's why I mentioned indicting those persons that we can prove and establish beyond a reasonable doubt are responsible for providing drugs to persons who later die. We're very proud of the fact that we've gained a reputation in this region for some pretty stiff sentences for persons accused of trafficking in drugs. And it's my intention to maintain that reputation. So I know that from speaking to defense lawyers, and I know that from apocryphal stories that get back to us from inmates at the county jail.
So in talking with law enforcement, and I have taken the opportunity and the time to speak with a lot of law enforcement officers all the way from East Liverpool clear up to Perry Township and back again. And the number one complaint I'm hearing about the current administration at the prosecutor's office is that they're arresting these folks. They know they're from out of town, but then they're getting cut loose back into the open, and then disappearing and never being able to be found again. And the big reason for that is the speedy trial provisions and charging folks and turnaround times with the state crime lab to get back the results on the samples that they're sending down to the state. So something I would like to see happen if I'm able to get in there is to seek out either privatized lab basis where we can use a lab that maybe has a quicker turnaround time, potentially utilizing grants to try to seek more reliable and better field testing kits so we can try to get a more solid sample on these situations so we can get these things to trial in a timely manner. Again, I'm not in there, so I don't know what the process is and what exactly we could do about it, but I've done a lot of reading on it, and I know there are ways and there are places, counties and states that are able to have much quicker turnaround times on these results. And when you have the quicker turnaround times, you don't have to cut these guys loose due to worrying about violating speedy trial provisions. So it's essentially creating a hostile environment for the spread of drugs and the sale of drugs. If you make it an inhospitable place, you make it a place where they know we're closed for business with regard to drugs, then you're helping drop down that drug abuse level and those drug sales.
Well, I just refer to it as the carrot and stick method. For first and second time offenders, for felony 4s or particularly felony 5 drug possession offenses, when those persons are not drug traffickers, many times those persons charged with those offenses are actually drug traffickers, and we treat them a little differently. But for persons who are clearly addicted to drugs, for those low-level felony offenses, we funnel them immediately into intervention in lieu of conviction, and they can have 2 bites at that apple if they're so inclined, and we even are somewhat, well, I don't want to put it that way. Our probation department is diligent with those guys and women, but if they happen to trip up, then there begins a series of graduated levels of punishment. We might start out with a community-based facility, or maybe a couple of weeks in the county jail, maintain them on community control, or maintain them for a period of time on intervention in lieu of conviction. But if they continue to violate the law, if they continue to break into people's houses while they're on intervention, or committing minor level theft offenses, or if they test positive repeatedly, then the carrot and the stick gets a little shorter, and we begin to use incarceration as a way to control them. Sometimes those persons are simply unable to curb their behavior, and unfortunately, in some of those cases, they do end up going to prison for short periods of time, 6 months to 12 months at a time, maybe.
Yeah, recidivism definitely is a concern. As you know, in Mahoning County and Trumbull County, they do have drug courts in different forms and fashion that they're able to utilize to try to better rehabilitate and educate folks. I've had clients go through Judge Durkin's court up in Mahoning County and seen that program can have a real benefit to folks. I know at the municipal court level here in Columbiana County, we do have a drug court program through Judge McNichol. I'd like to see that program expanded so we can get folks the education and the rehabilitative help they need to try to keep from relapse and recidivism and things like that with the drug usage.
We're currently, because of a retirement, we are currently a little understaffed. And so in very near future, we're going to have to add at least one assistant to our staff. But I'm proud to say, and I think that you can ask around to any defense bar in this region, I'm proud to say that we have maybe some of the most experienced trial lawyers on our staff of any place around. We are very effective. I have friends of mine on the defense bar from Mahoning County that I respect as defense lawyers, who often will tell me that, and so I know that. So my intention is to maintain that high level of experience in this office and maintain a high level of talent and persons able to try cases. That's the number one job of this office. It's not the only thing that we do. We have a civil division that is very competent, and Andy Beach has been around a long time, very competent at handling civil matters involving our various townships, municipalities, and the various county agencies. And so my job is to maintain that at this stage.
So you really don't know the answer to that until you get in there. I'm familiar with some of the folks they have in there. I'm familiar, obviously, with the judges. I'm familiar with the system. But I think it is one where, and I've approached this the same way. In every office I've been asked to come into as a new leader. For example, the military is a great example. Taking over a team of prosecutors or taking home a team of defense counsel. I used to do defense work for the military as well in the JAG Corps. When you take over those offices, you have to sit back and you have to take a hard look at what you have, take a hard look at the people you have, and then you kind of have to do an inventory of what I have, what's working well, and so forth. You also have to go to what I call your customers. In any industry or business, you have customers. The same goes with this office. You have to talk to the judges. They're a customer. You have to talk to the families of victims. They're a customer. You have to talk to the townships and the township trustees, who are a large part of what we do in a prosecutor's office. You have to talk to these folks and you have to say, listen, spare feelings here. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? I don't want to hear, well, this is all the things that went wrong if I get in there. I want to hear what they were doing well, but I also want to know that where there might have been some failures. So to say this is exactly what's going to happen, I can't tell you that. I can tell you right now that I have a strong emphasis on working on the unsolved murders in the county, of which there are well over 30 during the tenure of the current administration in the office. We got to take a hard look at those. I plan on looking at those from day one, seeking outside help, whether it be at the state or federal level. We're not going to have a hands-off, closed-door policy on those things. We need to try to get help. I can also tell you I want to take a hard look at the drug problem that you mentioned. Try to get those turnaround times on trial times to get those to trial much quicker, to get lab turnaround times much quicker, to have prosecutors assigned to cases at the ground level as they come in. So they're kind of ushering and managing that case from start to finish, working with police. Just those kind of reforms that I've been used to. One thing you got to love the United States government and the military and the Department of Justice. They had the budget to send me to some outstanding schools and to some outstanding places to get education on how to try these cases and handle different things. I'd love to send some of my people to those schools. Let's get them to a federal school. Let's get them to the National Advocacy Center. Let's get them certified in advanced forensics. Let's do all those things that we can raise our game to make the office a better place. So what that looks like exactly, we'll see. I want to inventory those folks. I want to inventory our policies and procedures. And from there, I want to make it a better place. I want to provide world-class prosecutorial support throughout the township, both on the criminal law side and with regard to government law in our townships.
It takes a lot of time and experience. And one of the most difficult things for a young lawyer, I remember that time as a young person. One of the most difficult things to do is to begin to learn what recommendations to make to the judge. Ultimately, a sentencing decision is up to the court. What the court is free to adopt any recommendations made by the state or deviate from those recommendations, and sometimes the judges do. Often they don't, but sometimes they do. The thing to remember is that a prosecuting attorney is the only person in the courtroom who has the duty both to represent his client as best he or she can within the bounds of the law and to do justice. And doing justice doesn't always necessarily mean a lengthy prison sentence. And sometimes that's a difficult thing to gauge and to weigh. And so it takes a lot of experience to do that. I will say that our philosophy, my philosophy, is that the higher up the scale you go on criminal offenses, the more likelihood it is that you're going to receive a lengthy prison sentence. The younger you are or the older you are will factor in on recommendations. But ultimately, a decision on whether to go to trial or not is a defendant's decision. We don't indict a case unless we are prepared to go to trial. It's not right to do that. I have friends on the defense bar, and particularly friends in the Mahoney County Defense Bar, who have commented to me about that. about the fact that they, when they have a defendant down here that they represent, they know he's never overcharged or she's never overcharged. I mentioned earlier, my job is to do two things: represent the people of Columbiana County and the state of Ohio as best that I am able to within the bounds of the law, and to do justice while I'm in the courtroom. And so, if a case is deserving to go to trial, in my professional opinion, based upon my 30 years experience in the courtroom, then that's what I'm going to do. But if this case should be resolved in some fashion, short of that, then I'm not afraid to do that either. Sometimes that's difficult to do. Sometimes when you're talking to victims or to witnesses, those are tough decisions to make. But we always do it with a considered opinion, with input from both the police officers and the victims' families. Sometimes we don't agree, but ultimately we feel that we generally will make the right decision.
So obviously with those types of deals, you have two things you have to balance. And one is doing justice and make sure the prosecutor's office is holding criminals accountable, preventing recidivism, and making sure that we're serving our populace well in the prevention of crime and the deterrence of crime. The other is the realities of the court system and what it can facilitate. Now, I don't have the hard and fast statistics of what goes through the office because, again, I'm not there. But you can pretty much rest assured that if you were to say no plea bargains are going to occur, well, you'd probably need twice as many judges and twice as many courtrooms, twice as large of a jury pool, and the demand on the system as a whole to make that happen. So, from a practical standpoint, I think that there are times and situations where you absolutely have to look at plea bargaining, whether that's getting evidence in a case where you've identified the trigger person or the person who is the primary component in a criminal enterprise, potentially getting a plea bargain or to get the folks who might have been involved that weren't necessarily the trigger person in that regard to cut a deal to offer evidence against that person. In that situation, sure, you're going to see that. But I think it's a balancing act for sure. You have to make sure that the capacity is there to support whatever your policy is. But as a general rule, of course, it's always going to have its place in the court system. We just don't have the capacity or the funds or the ability to take every single thing to trial that you may want to.